The blue lights flickered across Admiral Kesso's command center as another explosion shook the underground bunker. Dust fell from the ceiling like gray snow. The Zarian commander's forearms trembled as she watched the status reports flooding her screens. Every few seconds, another red warning appeared. Another city gone. Another shelter overrun. "Admiral, we've lost contact with Sector 7, reported her communications officer, a young Zarian named Veltar. His green skin had turned pale with fear. "The Vracht bioships are moving toward the civilian centers." Kesha closed her large black eyes for a moment. In her 70 years of life, she had never seen violence like this. The Zarians were a peaceful people. They built hospitals, not weapons. They studied medicine, not war. Their greatest achievement was the cure for the Red Death that had once swept through the galaxy. They saved lives. They did not take them, but the Vracht swarm did not care about such things. The insect-like aliens had arrived 3 days ago in ships that looked like giant beetles. Each ship was as big as a city and carried thousands of warriors inside. They had not come to talk or trade. They had come to feed. The Vracht needed biological matter to fuel their ships and grow their numbers. They turned living beings into a thick soup that powered their technology. To them, the 3 million Zarians on New Haven were nothing more than fuel waiting to be harvested. "Show me the surface feeds," Kesha ordered. The main screen lit up with images from security cameras around the planet. What she saw made her stomach turn. Giant Vracht warriors, each standing 10 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and armor-like shells, marched through the streets. They carried Zarian civilians in metal cages toward massive processing plants. The plants looked like twisted metal trees with pipes and tanks that glowed with sick green light. Children cried for their parents. Parents screamed for their children. The Vracht ignored their pleas and continued their work. "How many ships do they have?" Kesha asked. "Our sensors count over 200 bioships in orbit," Veltar replied. "Each one carries at least 5,000 warriors. We estimate their total force at more than 1 million soldiers." "And our defenses?" Veltar looked down at his hands. "The orbital defense platforms were destroyed in the first hour. Our security forces had only basic weapons. They fought bravely, but—" He did not need to finish. Kesha knew the truth. The Zarians had no real military. Why would they? For 500 years they had lived in peace with their neighbors. They settled disputes with words, not weapons. They healed wounds instead of causing them. Now that peaceful nature was killing them. "Admiral," called out another officer, "we're receiving messages from other colonies. The Vracht attacked the mining station at Kepler 7 yesterday. They wiped out everyone there. The research station at Wolf 359 went silent this morning. The swarm was spreading. New Haven was just one target among many. But that knowledge did not help the millions of people being herded toward the processing plants like animals." "What about our allies?" Kesha asked. "Have any of them responded to our distress calls?" Veltar shook his head. The Luxari Collective sent a message saying they regret the situation but cannot spare resources for military action. The Nexus Imperium ran calculations and determined that helping us would cost more than we're worth to them. The Ethereals haven't responded at all. Each rejection felt like a knife in Kesha's heart. These were the same species the Zarians had helped over the centuries. When the Luxari homeworld was struck by the Crimson Plague, Zarian doctors had worked for months to develop a cure. When the Nexus faced a computer virus that threatened their entire network, Zarian scientists had solved the problem in days. But now, when the Zarians needed help, their friends had turned away. "Keep sending the distress signal," Kesha ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies. Maybe someone out there still has honor." The message went out across the galaxy, carried by powerful transmitters that reached dozens of star systems. It was simple and desperate. "This is Admiral Kesha of the Zarian Defense Force. Our world is under attack by the Vracht swarm. They are killing our people and turning them into fuel for their ships. We have no weapons powerful enough to stop them. We have no warriors trained for this kind of battle. We are doctors, teachers, scientists, and farmers. We seek only to help others and live in peace. But now we are dying. Our children are being taken. We have tried to fight, but we are not soldiers. We need help. We need someone who can stand against this evil. Please, if there is mercy left in this galaxy, if there is justice, help us. We do not ask for much. We ask only for the chance to live." The message played over and over, sent to every corner of known space. Most species who received it deleted it immediately. War was expensive. The Vrakth were dangerous. Getting involved would only bring trouble. But in a distant corner of the galaxy, on a small blue planet that most aliens had forgotten about, the message was picked up by a listening post hidden in the mountains. The humans who heard it had been isolated from the rest of the galaxy for 200 years. Most aliens believed humanity had destroyed itself long ago in endless wars. The few who remembered them called humans the violent ones or the species that weaponized everything. The truth was more complex. Humans had been kicked out of galactic society after a peace negotiation had gone wrong. What was supposed to be a simple trade discussion had ended with 3 ships destroyed and hundreds dead. The other species had decided that humans were too dangerous to be around civilized beings, so humans had been quarantined on their own worlds, forbidden from leaving their small corner of space. Signs posted around human territory warned other species to stay away. Dangerous primitives was the label most commonly used, but Kesaha's message reached them anyway. On Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sarah Chen listened to the Zetharian plea for the 5th time. Her weathered face showed no emotion, but her hands were clenched into fists. "Ma'am," said her aide, Major Rodriguez, "the Joint Chiefs are waiting for your decision." Chen stood up slowly. She was 55 years old and had been fighting wars since she was 18. She had seen humanity's greatest victories and worst defeats. She knew what humans were capable of when pushed too far. "Tell them we're going," she said quietly. "Ma'am, the Zetharians are 3 months away at maximum speed. By the time we get there—" "I know," Chen interrupted. "But 50 years ago, when our colony ship was dying in the Proxima system, who came to help us? When our people were sick with the Red Death, who gave us the cure for free? The Zetharians did. They asked for nothing in return." She walked to the window and looked out at the snow-covered mountains. "Now they're asking for help. They're dying, Rodriguez, and everyone else has turned their backs on them. The fleet isn't designed for offensive operations, ma'am. We've only got a few dozen ships that can make the journey. Most of our military is focused on planetary defense." Chen nodded. "Then we'll take what we have. How many ships can make the trip?" 12, maybe 15 if we push the older ones. "And about 3,000 Marines." "Against 1,000,000 Vrakth warriors," Chen said with a bitter smile. "The galaxy's going to get a reminder of why they quarantined us in the first place." She turned back to Rodriguez. "Prep the fleet. Load everything we've got." "And Rodriguez?" "Yes, ma'am." "Make sure they know we're coming." The War Council met in the deepest part of Earth's military command center. 12 people sat around a metal table, their faces lit by the glow of data screens and star charts. Outside, snow fell on the mountains, but inside, the air was thick with tension. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the head of the table, her gray hair pulled back in a tight knot. Her uniform bore the scars of decades of service, burn marks from the Mars Rebellion, a medal from the Titan Defense, and a patch that simply read, "Survivor from the gene wars that had nearly destroyed humanity." "Show them the recordings," Chen ordered. The main screen lit up with footage from New Haven. The images were hard to watch. Vrakth warriors dragged Zetharian families from their homes. Processing plants worked day and night, turning living beings into fuel. The sound of crying children filled the room. "This has been going on for 6 days now," reported Intelligence Chief Williams. "Our deep space sensors show the Vrakth have over 200 ships in the New Haven system. Conservative estimates put their ground forces at 1.5 million warriors." General Martinez, the head of the Marine Corps, leaned forward. "And how many ships can we spare for this mission?" 15 at most, answered Fleet Admiral Torres. "The journey will take 3 months each way. We'd be leaving Earth's defenses seriously weakened." "What's our total force projection capability?" asked Chen. Torres pulled up a list on his tablet. 3,000 Marines, maybe 4,000 if we strip the orbital stations, 12 main battle cruisers, 3 support ships, the usual weapons load, plus whatever special equipment we can fit. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the math. 15 human ships against 200 alien ones. 4,000 Marines against 1.5 million Vrakth warriors. It was not a battle. It was suicide. "Ma'am," said Dr. Hayes from the Science Division, "I've been studying the Vrakth for the past week. They're a hive species. They think as one mind, act as one unit. They've conquered 12 systems in the past 5 years using the same tactics every time. Overwhelming numbers, biological weapons, and fear. Weaknesses? Chen asked. They've never faced serious resistance. Every species they've attacked either surrendered immediately or was too weak to fight back. They're used to easy victories. General Martinez snorted. That doesn't help us much when they outnumber us 300 to 1. Chen walked to the star chart on the wall. Red dots showed Vract attacks across the galaxy. Green dots showed human territory, isolated and alone in one corner of space. Between them lay thousands of light years and dozens of neutral systems. The other species won't help, she said quietly. The Luxari called it natural selection. The Nexus ran cost-benefit analysis and decided the Zetharians weren't worth saving. The Ethereals don't even consider biological life important enough to notice. And us? Asked Marine Colonel Santos. What makes us different? Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was hard as steel. 50 years ago, our colony ship New Hope was dying in the Proxima system. Engine failure, life, support failing, 8,000 people with maybe 2 days to live. We sent out distress calls to everyone. The Luxari said it would take too long to reach us. The Nexus calculated that the rescue cost exceeded our value. The Ethereals didn't respond at all. She pointed to a small section of the star chart. But a Zetharian medical ship changed course. They spent 3 weeks fixing our engines and gave us medicine that saved 2,000 lives from the Red Death. They asked for nothing in return. When we tried to pay them, they said helping others was payment enough. The room was silent. Most of the people there remembered the Proxima incident. It had happened during the dark years after humanity's exile from galactic society. Many had lost friends or family to the Red Death before the Zetharian cure arrived. They saved us when no one else would, Chen continued. Now they're asking for help and everyone has turned their backs on them, just like they turned their backs on us. Ma'am, said Admiral Torres carefully, even if we owe them, this is a suicide mission. 15 ships against their entire fleet will be destroyed before we can even land troops. Maybe, Chen agreed. But we're going anyway. Why? Asked Dr. Hayes. I mean, I understand the debt of honor, but why risk everything for a fight we can't win? Chen turned to face the room. Her eyes were cold as winter steel. Because someone has to. Because the galaxy has forgotten what justice looks like. Because evil wins when good people do nothing. She walked back to the table and placed her hands on its surface. And because the galaxy needs to remember why they quarantined us in the first place. The meaning behind her words hit the room like a physical blow. The other species had exiled humanity because they were afraid. Afraid of what humans did in war. Afraid of how far humans would go to win. Afraid of the monsters that nice, civilized people could become when pushed too far. Ma'am, said General Martinez slowly, are you talking about breaking the Geneva Protocols? The Geneva Protocols were humanity's own rules of war, written after the gene wars had nearly destroyed their species. They banned certain weapons, certain tactics, certain ways of fighting that were considered too horrible even for humans. I'm talking about doing whatever it takes to save 3 million innocent people, Chen replied. The Vract don't follow any rules of war. They turn children into fuel. They eat their prisoners alive. They are monsters in every sense of the word. She looked around the table at each person. So we'll be monsters too. The kind of monsters that hunt other monsters. Colonel Santos spoke up. The troops won't have a problem with that, ma'am. Nobody joins the Marines to play by the enemy's rules. What about the other species? Asked Dr. Hayes. If we use banned weapons, if we fight like the old days, they'll never let us back into galactic society. Chen laughed, but there was no humor in it. Doctor, they exiled us 200 years ago and haven't spoken to us since. We're already outcasts. What's the worst they can do, exile us harder? Admiral Torres pulled up fleet readiness reports. If we're really doing this, we need to discuss logistics. The journey to New Haven will take 3 months. By the time we arrive, the Zetharians might all be dead. Then we make sure the Vract pay for it, Chen said simply. Equipment? asked General Martinez. Everything, Chen replied. Nuclear mines, chemical weapons, biological agents, the works. If it's in storage, it goes on the ships. And Martinez? Yes, ma'am. Break out the Pandora arsenal. The room went dead silent. The Pandora arsenal was humanity's collection of weapons so terrible they had never been used. Devices built during the darkest days of the Gene Wars, when humans had tried to find new ways to destroy each other. They had been locked away for good reason. Ma'am, said Dr. Hayes carefully, some of those weapons are banned by our own laws. Hell, some of them are banned by the laws of physics. The Vracht want to play extinction games, Chen said coldly. Let's show them what extinction really looks like. She stood up and looked around the table one last time. I want volunteers only. No one gets ordered on this mission. Anyone who wants out can leave now with no questions asked. Nobody moved. Good, Chen said. We leave in 72 hours. Get me everything we have that kills things, and some stuff that doesn't kill things so we can turn it into something that does. The galaxy abandoned the Zetharians to die, but they forgot something important. What's that, ma'am? Asked Colonel Santos. Chen's smile was sharp as a knife. They forgot that humans don't abandon our friends, and we really don't like bullies. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Haven system, like wolves emerging from a dark forest. 15 ships against an armada of alien biovessels that filled the space around the planet like a swarm of metallic insects. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the battleship Retribution, watching the tactical display with cold eyes. 3 months had passed since they left Earth. 3 months of hoping they would arrive in time to save someone, anyone, from the Vracht harvest. What they found was worse than their darkest fears. Report, Chen ordered. Lieutenant Commander Park, the ship's tactical officer, read from his screens with a tight voice. 237 Vracht bioships in orbit. Massive industrial complexes on the planet's surface. Ma'am. He paused, struggling with his words. The processing plants are still active. They're still running. Chen felt ice form in her stomach. After 3 months, the plants were still working. That meant there were still Zetharians alive down there, still being turned into fuel for the Vracht war machine. Enemy ship configurations? She asked. Unknown designs, ma'am. They look like living creatures instead of built ships. The largest ones are 5 kilometers long. Our computers can't match them to any known technology. On the main screen, the Vracht fleet looked like a collection of giant beetles and wasps floating in space. Their ships pulsed with organic light, and some seemed to be growing new sections even as the humans watched. Ma'am, called Communications Officer Davis. We're being hailed by the enemy fleet. Put them through. The screen flickered, and a face appeared that would haunt human nightmares for generations. Hive Commander Zicht was pure nightmare fuel. An insect head the size of a car with compound eyes that reflected light like broken glass. Mandibles clicked when she spoke and green fluid dripped from her mouth. Unknown vessels, the creature said in a voice like grinding metal. You are trespassing in Vracht territory. Identify yourselves and your purpose or be consumed. Chen stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation Navy. We're here for the Zetharians. Release them immediately and withdraw from this system. The aliens' laughter sounded like breaking bones. Terrans. The violent primitives? We thought your species destroyed itself long ago. How amusing that a few survived. You have 1 hour to comply with our demands, Chen said calmly. Zicht's compound eyes glittered with dark humor. Little primitive, do you see our fleet? We have over 200 ships and more than 1 million warriors. You have 15 tiny vessels. Perhaps your species did not destroy itself. Perhaps you are simply too stupid to recognize when you are beaten. 59 minutes, Chen replied. The transmission cut off, and Zicht's image disappeared. For a moment, the bridge was silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of weapon systems charging. Ma'am, said Commander Park, they're moving to surround us. Looks like they want to capture our ships intact. Chen nodded. How long until they're in range? 45 minutes. Good. That gives us time to get ready. She turned to the communications station. Davis, open a channel to the fleet. Channel open, ma'am. Chen's voice echoed through every human ship in the system. This is Admiral Chen. You all know why we're here. 3 million innocent people are being murdered by these creatures. Every minute we delay, more Zetharians die. The enemy outnumbers us, outguns us, and probably thinks we're insane for being here." She paused, looking out at the alien fleet. "They're right. We are insane. We're so insane that we came 3 months through space to fight an enemy we can't beat to save people who aren't even our species. We're so insane that we're going to win anyway." On 15 ships, 3,000 Marines checked their weapons and said prayers to gods both old and new. "The Vrakth think they know what war is," Chen continued. "They've spent decades beating up peaceful species who couldn't fight back. They think war is about numbers and firepower and fear. They're about to learn what humans know about war." She looked directly into the camera, and her eyes were as cold as deep space. "War isn't about numbers. War is about how far you're willing to go, and humans will go further than anyone else in this galaxy. Further than anyone should have to go." The channel closed, and Chen turned back to her bridge crew. "Helm, take us toward the largest concentration of enemy ships. Weapons, arm, everything we brought. And I mean everything." "Ma'am," said Park carefully. "The Pandora weapons. Especially those," Chen said flatly. 30 minutes later, the Vrakth fleet began its attack. Bioships the size of cities opened fire with weapons that shot living acid and poisonous gas. They expected the tiny human ships to run or surrender like every other species had done. Instead, the humans did something that had never been seen in galactic warfare. They charged straight into the enemy formation. The battleship Retribution fired nuclear missiles at point-blank range, using atomic weapons like machine gun bullets. The destroyer Vengeance rammed a Vrakth bioship head-on, its hull packed with explosives that turned both vessels into a miniature sun. But it was what the Marines did that truly horrified the Vrakth human boarding pods, punched through bioship hulls like bullets through skin. Inside the alien vessels, Marines fought with weapons that violated every civilized rule of war. Flamethrowers turned Vrakth warriors into screaming torches. Chemical sprays dissolved their armor like acid. Biological weapons made them turn on each other in mindless rage. Sergeant Maria Santos led her squad through the corridors of a Vrakth processing ship, following the sound of screaming toward the holding areas where Zatharian prisoners were kept. The walls around her were alive, pulsing with organic light, and the floor was slippery with green fluid. "Contact front," shouted Corporal Williams as a group of Vrakth warriors charged around a corner. The aliens were 10 feet tall with razor claws and armor like beetle shells. They moved fast and hit hard. Under normal circumstances, they would have torn the humans apart. But these were not normal circumstances. Santos pulled the pin on a thermobaric grenade and threw it into the group. The explosion sucked all the air from the corridor and collapsed the Vrakth lungs like empty balloons. The ones who survived that died when her squad opened fire with explosive rounds that punched through alien armor like paper. "Keep moving," Santos shouted. "The prisoners are this way." They found the holding area 10 minutes later. Hundreds of Zatharians were packed into metal cages, waiting to be fed into the processing machines. Many were children. All of them were terrified. "It's okay," Santos called to them in the broken Zatharian she had learned during the journey. "We're here to help. We're friends." An elderly Zatharian male pressed against the bars of his cage. "Are you angels?" he asked in accented English. Santos looked at her squad. Marines covered in alien blood, carrying weapons that civilized species had banned centuries ago, having just killed their way through a ship full of living creatures. "No," she said quietly. "We're not angels. We're something else." Above them in space, Admiral Chen watched her fleet tear apart an enemy that outnumbered them 20-1. The humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They used nuclear weapons as close-range artillery. They turned their own ships into guided missiles. They boarded enemy vessels and fought hand-to-hand against creatures twice their size. Most terrifying of all, they won. Hive Commander Zikth watched her fleet die ship by ship and realized she had made a terrible mistake. These weren't the peaceful primitives her files described. These were something far worse. These were predators who had learned to hunt in packs. "All ships withdraw," she screamed into her communicator. "Full retreat." But Admiral Chen's voice echoed across all frequencies, cold and final. No survivors. No witnesses. No mercy. The humans had come to save the innocent, but they had also come to send a message to the galaxy. And that message was written in fire and blood across the New Haven system. The monsters had arrived, and they were winning. The battle for New Haven became a slaughter that would be remembered across the galaxy for centuries. What started as a rescue mission turned into something darker, something that revealed the true nature of humanity when all restraints were removed. Sergeant Maria Santos kicked down the door to another processing chamber and found hell on the other side. Dozens of Zetharian children were strapped to metal tables while Vrath technicians prepared to drain their life fluids. The aliens had been so confident in their victory that they hadn't even bothered to guard their prisoners properly. That confidence was their last mistake. Santos and her squad moved through the chamber like death itself. Their weapons made sounds no civilized being had heard in 1,000 years. The hiss of chemical sprayers, the roar of flame units, the wet crunch of explosive rounds tearing through alien flesh. The Vrath technicians tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Burn it all, Santos ordered. Every machine, every table, every piece of their nightmare factory. Her Marines didn't hesitate. Flame units bathed the processing equipment in liquid fire, while explosive charges reduced the torture devices to scrap metal. The organic computers that controlled the facility screamed as they died. Actual screams, because the Vrath made their technology from living tissue. On the tables, Zetharian children wept with relief as human medics cut them free from their restraints. Most were too weak to walk, poisoned by whatever chemicals the Vrath had pumped into them. But they were alive. Against all odds, they were still alive. How many? Santos asked her medic, Corporal Zhang. 43 kids, 12 adults, Zhang reported. Most are in bad shape, but they'll live if we get them medical attention. Through her radio, Santos could hear similar reports from other squads scattered across the bioship. Prisoners found and freed, processing chambers destroyed, Vrath warriors eliminated with extreme prejudice. But the real horror was happening in space. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution and watched her fleet systematically destroy an enemy that outnumbered them 20-1. The tactics her ships used were not found in any military academy textbook. They were methods born from humanity's darkest wars, refined during centuries of conflict, and perfected by a species that had learned to turn warfare into an art form. The destroyer Fury had strapped nuclear warheads to its hull and rammed a Vrath command ship, turning both vessels into a brief new star. The cruiser Defiance was using captured Vrath bioweapons against their creators, spraying living acid that ate through alien hulls like paper. The frigate Vengeance had somehow managed to board and capture an entire enemy ship, and was now using it to attack other Vrath vessels. "Ma'am," reported Commander Park, "the enemy is attempting to retreat. Should we let them go?" Chen's answer was immediate and final. "Negative. Hunt them down. All of them. Ma'am, some of their ships are trying to surrender. They're broadcasting what our translators think are white flag signals." Chen turned to look at her tactical officer. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "Commander, how many Zetharian children do you think begged for mercy before they were fed into those machines?" Park swallowed hard. "Understood, ma'am." No quarter given. The human fleet spread out across the system like a pack of wolves, running down fleeing Vrath ships one by one. They used weapons that civilized species had banned, tactics that violated every rule of honorable warfare, and methods that would have made their own ancestors weep. But they were effective. Hive Commander Zikth watched her magnificent fleet die ship by ship and tried to understand what had gone wrong. The humans fought like nothing in her experience. They didn't seem to care about losses or casualties. Every ship fought as if it were already destroyed. Every soldier acted as if death was preferable to defeat. Most terrifying of all, they were learning. Zikth could see them adapting to Vrath tactics in real time, taking captured bioweapons and somehow making them work better than their original designs. It was as if the humans looked at every piece of alien technology and immediately thought of ways to make it more deadly. "Hive Commander," called her communications officer, "the humans are broadcasting something on all frequencies." Put it through. The transmission was not from Admiral Chen. Instead, it was the voice of a young human female, speaking in broken galactic standard. "This is Marine Sergeant Maria Santos of the Terran Federation. We found your prisoners. We found what you did to them. You turned children into fuel. You made torture into an assembly line. You treated living beings like livestock." The voice paused, and when it continued, it carried a weight that made even Zikth's alien nervous system shiver. "Now you know what humans do to creatures who hurt children. We don't capture you. We don't negotiate with you. We don't show mercy to you. We erase you from existence. The transmission cut off, leaving Zikth staring at her command screens in growing horror. The humans weren't fighting a military campaign. They were conducting an extermination. Every Vract ship they captured was destroyed. Every warrior they defeated was killed. They were systematically wiping out her entire fleet with the efficiency of a machine and the ruthlessness of natural predators. All remaining ships, she broadcast desperately, form defensive formation around my command vessel. We make our stand here. But her remaining ships, less than 50 now from the 200 she had started with, were already fleeing in panic. The hive mind that usually gave the Vract their strength was working against them. Every death scream from a destroyed ship echoed through their collective consciousness. Every moment of terror from defeated warriors spread through their ranks like a virus. For the first time in Vract history, their soldiers were experiencing something unknown: fear. On the surface of New Haven, human Marines moved through the processing plants like avenging angels. They found torture chambers where Zetharians had been kept alive for weeks while their bodies were slowly harvested. They found nurseries where alien children were being prepared for conversion. They found research labs where Vract scientists had been experimenting with new ways to extract maximum nutrition from living creatures. The Marines destroyed it. Captain Lisa Park led her company through the largest processing facility, following the blueprints they had captured from a Vract computer. The building was a maze of pipes and tanks and conveyor belts designed to turn people into fuel. The smell alone was enough to make hardened soldiers sick. "Third level cleared," reported Lieutenant Johnson over the radio. "Found 200 prisoners, mostly children. They're in bad shape but alive. Copy that. Medical teams are on the way," Park replied. "Any resistance?" "Negative. The bugs seem to have pulled back to the central facility." Park nodded. The Vract were learning, probably too late, that humans didn't fight the same way as other species. Most civilized races tried to minimize casualties and preserve infrastructure. Humans simply destroyed everything their enemies valued and worried about the consequences later. As her company moved deeper into the facility, Park found herself thinking about the reports they had received during the journey to New Haven. The Vract had conquered 12 systems using the same tactics: overwhelming force, biological weapons, and terror. They would arrive at a planet, demonstrate their power by destroying a few cities, and wait for the local government to surrender. It was an effective strategy against rational opponents who valued their own lives more than abstract principles. But humans were not always rational, and some principles were worth dying for. "Captain," called Sergeant Rodriguez from the point position, "you need to see this." Park moved to the front of her column and looked through the doorway Rodriguez had opened. Beyond was a vast chamber filled with thousands of metal pods. Each pod contained a Zetharian civilian suspended in green fluid, kept alive but unconscious while machines slowly drained their life essence. Some of the pods contained children who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Park looked at the scene for a long moment, her face showing no emotion. Then she turned to her company. "Burn it all," she said quietly. "Every machine, every computer, every piece of this place. I want nothing left but ash and memories." Behind her, 40 Marines reached for their flame units and explosive charges. They had come to New Haven to save lives, but they had also come to make sure that what they found here would never happen again. And they were very good at making sure things never happened again. 3 days after the first human ship entered the New Haven system, the shooting stopped. Not because the battle was over, but because there was nothing left to shoot at. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the medical bay of the Retribution, watching human doctors work alongside Zetharian survivors to treat the wounded. The scene should have been hopeful: lives saved, families reunited, children laughing for the first time in months. But Chen felt no joy, only the cold satisfaction of a job completed. "Final count, ma'am," reported Commander Park, reading from his tablet. 237 Vract ships destroyed. 0 survivors detected. Ground facilities are completely eliminated. We've recovered approximately 400,000 Zetharian civilians." Chen nodded without looking away from the medical bay. "And our losses?" 7 ships destroyed, 11 damaged. 843 KIA, over 2,000 wounded. The numbers were brutal, but they could have been worse. Much worse. The Vract had outnumbered them massively, but they had never fought an enemy that didn't play by civilized rules. They had expected surrender or retreat when faced with overwhelming odds, They had never encountered a species that would ram nuclear-armed ships into enemy formations or board alien vessels with flamethrowers and chemical weapons. "Admiral," called a familiar voice. Chen turned to see Admiral Kessa being wheeled toward her in a medical chair. The Zetharian commander was thin and pale, her 4 arms wrapped in bandages, but her large black eyes were alert and grateful. "Admiral Kessa," Chen said with a slight bow. "I'm glad to see you're recovering." "Thanks to you and your people," Kessa replied in accented English. "Though I must ask, what you did here, was it necessary to be so thorough?" Chen looked out through the medical bay windows at the wreckage floating in space. Chunks of destroyed Vracht bioships drifted among the twisted remains of their processing facilities. Nothing moved out there except debris and human patrol ships, making sure nothing had survived. "You asked for mercy," Chen said quietly. "But mercy for you meant no mercy for them. The Vracht don't understand anything except force. If we had shown weakness, if we had let any of them escape, they would have come back with reinforcements. They would have told the galaxy that humans could be beaten. Other predator species would have learned from their example." Kessa was quiet for a moment, studying Chen's face. "You didn't come here just to save us, did you?" "No," Chen admitted. "We came to send a message." "What message?" Chen's smile was cold as winter steel. "That there are monsters in this galaxy that hunt other monsters. And if you hurt the innocent, if you prey on the weak, the monsters will come for you." In the weeks that followed, that message spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The destruction of the Vracht swarm became the subject of emergency sessions in the Galactic Council. Species that had ignored the Zetharian pleas for help suddenly found themselves asking uncomfortable questions about humanity. The Luxari Collective, with their crystal cities and philosophical debates, received detailed reports of human combat tactics and decided that their previous assessment of humans as primitive might need revision. The footage of Marines using flamethrowers in close combat made their crystalline forms vibrate with horror. The Nexus. Imperium ran calculations on human military capabilities and concluded that their previous cost-benefit analysis regarding humanity had been dangerously flawed. A species that would travel 3 months to fight a hopeless battle was not operating under normal rational parameters. Such beings could not be predicted or controlled using standard methods. The ethereals floating in their energy bodies found themselves forced to acknowledge that sometimes physical action was more effective than spiritual contemplation. The humans had accomplished in 3 days what centuries of peaceful negotiation had failed to achieve: the complete elimination of the Vracht threat. But it was the smaller species, the ones who lived in fear of predators like the Vracht, who understood the true meaning of what had happened at New Haven. For the first time in galactic history, someone had stood up to bullies and monsters. Someone had said no more, and backed it up with actions instead of words. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the head of human xenobiology, found herself giving briefings to panicked alien ambassadors who wanted to understand what they were dealing with. "You have to understand," she explained to a gathering of diplomatic representatives. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We don't give up. We don't quit. When we decide something needs to be done, we do it regardless of the cost." "But the weapons you used," protested the Luxari ambassador, her crystal body flickering with distress. "Chemical warfare, biological agents, nuclear weapons used as tactical devices. These violate every civilized convention of war. Against an enemy that was turning children into fuel." Vasquez replied calmly. "Tell me, Ambassador, what conventions were the Vracht following when they fed living beings into processing machines? What rules of war protected the Zetharian civilians?" The Luxari had no answer to that. "The galaxy has spent centuries making war civilized," Vasquez continued. "You've created rules and conventions that make conflict clean and orderly. But you forgot something important. Some enemies don't follow rules. Some threats can't be negotiated with or reasoned with. Sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to become something worse." The Nexus representative, a cybernetic being that looked like a walking computer, spoke up. "But surely there were alternatives. Sanctions, diplomatic pressure, economic incentives. Tell that to the 400,000 Zetharians we pulled out of processing chambers," Vasquez said sharply. "Tell that to the children who were being kept alive while machines drained them slowly. How many more would have died while you ran economic calculations and filed diplomatic protests? On Earth, in the same mountain bunker where the decision to intervene had been made, Chen met with the Joint Chiefs to discuss the aftermath of their actions. The alien governments are demanding explanations, reported General Martinez. They want to know if humanity intends to interfere in other conflicts. What did you tell them? Chen asked. The truth. That we'll help our friends and hunt our enemies. That we don't start fights but we finish them. Chen nodded. Any word from the Zarians? Admiral Kessa sent a formal message, said Admiral Torres. She wants to establish military cooperation agreements. Apparently other peaceful species are asking the Zarians to request human protection. And the hostile species? Martinez grinned. Funny thing about that, ma'am. The pirate raids in the Outer Rim have dropped by 80%. Slave traders are avoiding systems with human-friendly governments. Even the war clans are being more careful about who they attack. Chen walked to the window and looked out at the snow-covered mountains. Somewhere out there in the depths of space, the galaxy was learning to fear humanity again. But this time it was a different kind of fear. Not the terror of uncontrolled violence, but the wariness of predators who knew there was something higher on the food chain. Ma'am, said Dr. Hayes from the Science Division, I have to ask. Was it worth it? The isolation, the fear, the way they look at us now? Chen thought about the Zarian children she had seen in the medical bay, laughing and playing for the first time in months. She thought about the message they had sent to every bully and monster in the galaxy. She thought about the peaceful species who could now sleep safely, knowing that someone would answer when they called for help. Doctor, she said quietly, someone once asked me what I was afraid of. You know what I told them? What's that, ma'am? I'm afraid of living in a galaxy where good people suffer and evil goes unpunished. I'm afraid of a universe where the strong prey on the weak and nobody does anything about it. I'm afraid of becoming the kind of person who calculates the cost of doing the right thing. She turned back to face the room, and her eyes held the same cold fire that had burned at New Haven. The galaxy wanted us to stay in our corner and be civilized. They wanted us to follow their rules and respect their conventions. But they forgot something important about humans. What's that? Asked General Martinez. Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. We're only civilized when civilization works. When it doesn't, when the innocent are threatened and the guilty go unpunished, we remember what we really are. And what's that? The monsters that hunt monsters. The nightmares that give nightmares. The species that looked at an infinite universe full of wonders and decided the most important thing was making sure children could sleep safely at night. Outside, snow continued to fall on the mountains of Earth, but across the galaxy, in the dark places where evil had once flourished, a new fear was spreading. The monsters had returned, and this time, they were hunting for justice. The plea for mercy had been answered, not with mercy but with something better, with the promise that in a cold and hostile universe, there were still those who would fight for what was right no matter the cost. The galaxy would remember New Haven for a long time. And in the dark corners of space, when predators looked at potential victims, they would ask themselves one important question. Are these people under human protection? And if the answer was yes, they would look elsewhere for prey.